Welcome to Going the Distance with Go Long. I'm Jill Beck, and I am here with Kristen Berman, who is the co-founder and CEO of Irrational Labs and is also a behavioral scientist, which we're going to get into all that. Just a quick thing about Go Long. Go Long is an accountability coaching service that functions via texts. So you were able to get personalized texts that align to your life and allow for things that sometimes life gets in the way and you could still stay on track. So with that, let's welcome Kristen to the show. So Kristen, I'm so happy you're here and I'm so excited about this conversation because I feel like a lot of the coaching I do is really around like trying to like shift behaviors and nudge people in a certain way. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So how did you get here? How does one become a behavioral scientist?
Yeah, great question. So a behavioral scientist, we study decision making. So we study the underlying motivation behind why people do something, and then we test and try to figure out how to change behavior. And my roots, I started a company over a decade ago with a behavioral economist named Dan Ariely. He wrote Predictably Irrational. We kicked off Google's behavioral economics group and ran that for 3 years. And one of kind of the insights is that this is typically an academic field. It's kind of, trapped in the papers, and a lot of behavior change is actually in the real world. And so I'm an applied behavioral scientist, which means I go to different environments. Some of this could be digital companies, kind of top tech, healthcare, finance companies. Some of these are nonprofits. Some of these are retail stores. And we make small changes in the environment to change behavior. So we study kind of the small things that could drive us to make one decision or not. And then we ideally test.
Oh my gosh, because there's so much to that. And a lot of that in the work that I'm doing with companies, which I started probably about, 9 months ago, is just really understanding all that and these little things that happen in companies. And one of the things that I think is like one of the biggest inhibitors to productivity is Slack in teams. The common conversation I have is that what if you didn't check Slack every minute of every day? Like, what if you actually just put like some note, Slack or Teams, and say like, I am checking Slack at 8 a.m., 1 p.m., and 4 p.m. Like, would the world completely like just go crazy?
Yeah. I like that a lot. And I think it by giving people these kind of rules of thumb of what you do something versus you do it anytime you want, you can kind of more create norms and habits this way. I would say, I think the barrier that people have is the mental model of work is communication. And so I think to actually have this be successful, we'd have to flip the mental model of work to be kind of the deep work that you do, and the communication is a side piece. It's not the work. And so I think in normal corporations, people have so many meetings and they have to include stakeholders and level up. And so we've forgotten that the core work is actually like doing your job, and your job isn't just communicating about your job to other people. So that flip has to happen. And then I think people believe that they only need to check Slack at 9, 11, and 4.
Yeah, whatever, right? I mean, and so when you're going into companies, right, it's more of how are you framing the discussion in terms of like these nudges? And like I've read Nudge by Cass Sunstein and everything else, but a while ago. But how do you approach, companies that have high performing people and there are these standards, whether real or imagined, and they have these very strong cultures, and you're like, hey, we're trying to nudge you in a certain way. How does that work?
Yeah. So some of our work is employee behavior change, and a lot of our work is actually end consumer behavior change. So you imagine like an Airtable, LinkedIn, Airbnb hires us to drive some end user behavior change. But the framework we use is pretty similar across, and we call it the 3Bs, which is this idea you identify a key behavior. So you say, what is it that you want to change? And our team says, get uncomfortably specific about it. So, you don't say eat healthy, you say eat a salad every day at lunch. You get uncomfortably specific about it. And then the second thing to do is reduce the barriers to doing it. And and I'll come back to that in a second. The third thing to do is increase the benefits, but not just benefits, immediate benefits to doing something. So we call that basically we need to reduce friction and increase motivation. And the reducing of the friction is like making something easy. It is making it psychologically easy, which means you don't have a hard decision to do. You don't procrastinate. We procrastinate with hard decisions. If there's uncertainty in the decision, we will do it less. And then logistically easy, which is actually just like the steps it takes to do a thing. And so imagine it took you 5 steps to log into Slack. You would do it less, not because you don't love Slack, but because it's just logistically harder. And we do things less if they're harder. And then the second piece here is the immediate benefits. And it's basically we're all present bias. I want to focus more and I open TikTok, right? My long-term goal is to focus and my short-term goal is to be entertained. And these are in conflict. We have 2 types of people. I am, today Kristen and future Kristen. We say hot state or cold state. And so when I'm making decisions, we need to basically really solve for present Kristen. My perfect self is in the future, but today I need to give myself an immediate benefit to be motivated. And so we want to focus on like what is the immediate benefit that someone gets from doing that key behavior that we've set up initially. And so, weight loss is a long-term goal. Focus is a long-term goal. Getting rich is a long-term goal. We need the immediate benefits to drive that real behavior change.
There's a lot that you talked about there. So one of the things when you were breaking this down is kind of like strength training, right? For women over 40. So I work with a lot of women over 40. And there's the whole like, I'm trying to lose weight, as you alluded to. But future Kristen, we'll just go with that. Trying to get you to do strength training because strength training is what is going to help stave off osteoporosis. So if you do lose your balance, you might have the muscle memory to keep yourself upright. But if you do fall, you have the muscle to kind of protect your bones so that you don't sustain a serious fracture down the road. The problem is that you don't see those changes overnight. You don't see them, even within like 3 months. Those are things that take like years of consistency to do. And it's really hard getting people to understand that.
Yeah. And so what we say here is if you can't do something for the right reason, which is long-term health, we would do something for the wrong reason. And so there's lots of wrong reasons to do something. And accountability is actually a wrong reason to do something. You should be doing it for your long-term longevity, blah, 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 blah. But if I know that I have to share with my friend that I did a 10-minute Peloton strength workout at the end of the day, or, my friend will pay money, I will pay money, I will look bad in front of them, my reputation is at risk, I will lose something, we tend to do it more. So there's actually a nice study. This is just about reputation risk, not even about payment, is the YMCA basically was doing a fundraising campaign. And in some groups, they said, look, we're going to donate money every time you come to the YMCA. And in some groups, they tell them at the end of the month, we'll publish the names of the people who came the most to everyone. And in some groups, they didn't tell them that. So this was not visible. Mm-hmm. No one knew if they came or not. And the groups that knew that their names would be published at the end of the month with how many times they came worked out more, came to the gym more.
Fascinating.
Yeah. And so these types of things where it's the reason that you're working out is because you want to look good in front of other people are actually okay. We should design more of those. We should design more ways to put pressure on ourselves to do the thing that we actually want to do long term. It's okay that we don't have that internal motivation today to do a 10-minute Peloton workout.
I actually talk about this a lot with my clients, and maybe this isn't the right terminology, so I'm prepared for you to correct me on this terminology, is that sometimes like you want to have, ideally you have that intrinsic motivation to just like get up and do something. But a lot of times you have to start with the extrinsic motivation. And it could be that, like for me, I was not a get up in the morning and work out person. And I used to hit snooze all the time. And it drove my boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband, absolutely fucking insane. And he's like, you got to stop this. Like, there's no more snooze, right? You're getting up when you're getting up. And he was also a get up in the morning and workout person. And so I made that shift because of almost him, right? And it took a while for me to cross that chasm from extrinsic to intrinsic, motivation to just like get up and do it because I want to do it and I know it's worthwhile for me to do it. But I tell that to people all the time because I feel like there's a lot of shame when you're talking about an I'm motivated by something extrinsic or external. And they feel like, oh no, I have to be motivated. And I'm like, who said that? Like, yeah, ideally you want to just like be motivated to do that. But if you're not, you're not. So why are you trying to force it?
Totally. Yeah. And I think we have this idea that a lot of people are, and actually I just don't think that's true for most things. So I am internally motivated for a few things, but not most things.
Yeah.
And so it's not that you don't have this motivation, you just have it only for a few things and you have to kind of manifest it for other things. And that is okay. And it can drive repeat behavior. You know, a lot of kind of the popular behavioral economics stuff early on said, look, extrinsic crowds out intrinsic. There's not much behind that for people who otherwise wouldn't be motivated to do it. There is stuff behind it. Is if I'm already motivated to do a thing and you add points or money to it, that will crowd out my motivation to continue. But the likelihood that you are already motivated to do something is just low, especially these things that you're adding points and money to do because it's a good or it's a thing that most people just aren't internally motivated to do. So I'm fine with adding this extrinsic motivation, especially to the things that are hard for most people.
So you brought up Peloton strength workout. So Peloton is probably one of the masters of gamification, right? With their badges and their streaks and everything else. And I am guilty of it myself. What are the studies around, apps that have like the streaks and the gamification like Peloton or Duolingo or some of like the money saving apps type of thing? Do you have any research on that?
Yeah, the Duolingo stuff, I think Peloton is a little bit less powerful than Duolingo in this because Duolingo says, hey, look, you tell me that you want to do this language learning thing. I'm going to remind you. And I'm going to serve up, reminders and emails that nudge you to do it. Peloton, doesn't, to their credit maybe, doesn't nag me if I don't go to the app once a week. If I only work out 0 times a week or once a week, they should be like, Kristen, you said that you want to do this. And so I think they could improve from that standpoint versus Duolingo's getting my active opt-in. It's saying, you want to do this thing. Now I get this permission to nag you about it. And I think that goes back to this like key behavior thing, which is like, as soon as you have a key behavior, which Duolingo is usually like asking you this in the beginning, like you're going to do a language learning for 5 minutes every day or something, that now the app has permission to nag you about that key behavior. And what these apps that do gamification well is let you say what your key behavior is and then build an app that gets you to do it.
I think that's an interesting point because I nag people. I nag people to like go and use their Peloton app or whatever it is. That's the personal nudge that I give them, right? But a lot of times I find that we all get in our own way. We overschedule ourselves thinking we can do this and we can't. We end up feeling like we're disappointing people, or we don't put ourselves in a position to be successful is what I call it, right? I feel like a lot of times people focus on, especially as we're recording this before the new year, but we're coming up on New Year's resolutions. And, I always say New Year's resolutions, like they go to die by like January 19th. And people don't focus on the systems. They focus more on like, I'm going to go to the gym 5 days a week, or I'm going to lose 20 pounds by the end of February type of thing. But they don't focus on the systems. And I feel like that's part of like not putting yourself in a position to be successful. So what have you seen about that?
Yeah. So the system, given the accountability coach, I think the system that I most use is I call mutually assured non-complacency, which means I partner up with somebody or multiple people and we align on the goals that we want to do. And then for a period of time, and it's not indefinite, usually a month or 3 months, we hold each other accountable for those goals. And what that looks like is on Friday at 4:30, I have a meeting with Claire. Claire and I are friends, but we have a meeting and we discuss, we don't talk about life or anything else. Like at the end, I may ask her about our kids, but like, we're like, did you do the thing that you said you would do today or this week? And I want proof. I want proof you did it. And then we commit to goals for the next week. And those goals, we question each other. I'm like, that seems like too big of a goal for you. I don't think that that's the right thing. So we have a discussion I'm basically bringing somebody else into my life, and she's bringing somebody else into hers to basically riff on the thing that we want to do. And so that when it comes the next week and we look back, we've done it. Versus basically saying, like, if you go 2 to 3 weeks, you look back and I didn't do the thing that I really wanted to do. So the system of accountability, if you put it in up front, can really hold you to these kind of like these ambitions that you have. And it actually requires active opt-in. And I think that's kind of the main barrier for people is we think that we will be successful, so we don't create the system. If you knew you were going to fail, you would create a system. So the main intervention is to remind yourself, like, the reason you're struggling is because you've struggled before. If it was easy, you would have already done it.
That is such a powerful way of saying it. Like, basically how you said, like, if you knew you were going to fail, you would put in the system. And people, like, they're just like, I'm going to somehow do it, right? And there's this quote that always is attributed, I think, to Albert Einstein, and I have no idea if he's the one who actually said it. You know, it's like the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And I don't know if he's the one who actually said it, but everyone says he said it.
Yeah. And I think it's scary to opt into these systems. So right now, I know that this type of accountability works for me working out. I understand that is a good thing for me to do. I know it works so well that once I put the system in place, I will do the thing. So I'm procrastinating putting the system in place because I know it works so well. So I think the other kind of barrier here is people are scared about doing the actual thing because it does take work. It is hard. It's like not a freebie, most of these things. And so some of it is getting the courage enough to create the active opt-in so that you start the system. And the cold start problem is a big deal here. So if you're listening to this, the key thing is to start to create the system.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times, like, so someone came to me and they wanted help. They kept procrastinating doing their divorce agreement. And they kept waiting for like the 4 hours on a Sunday that they would have to go through the divorce agreement. And like months went by, they're a single parent, and no one ever ends up having the 4 hours on Sunday that they think they're going to have. Like, that happens to nobody. So she hired me and I said, all right, I want you just to list the steps that are remaining in the divorce agreement. Like, I don't want you to do any step. I want you just to list the steps. Do not do any step. If you're tempted, I want you to stop. Right? She did that. Texted me. Then the next day, okay, now I want you to identify how many steps you can get through in a half hour. And if you go over a half hour, you need to break up that last step. You cannot spend more than a half hour on it. And we got this done in under 10 days, something she had been putting off for months, because the thing is that it was just getting her to not think of it as a big, hairy, scary monster, as I like to call them, right? And it's like, let's just list the steps. Like, let's just get it out of your head and onto your app, piece of paper, whatever. Let's just get it out of your head. And then you could then hit what you could see.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, we kind of make things a little bit bigger when they're abstract. And so as soon as you make something concrete, it can become smaller. And we think it may take longer than it actually does. So, you know, we have these large tasks and it's like, I have to do my taxes. It's like, this could take you a very long time. Or you've done it every year. You know, it probably will take you not as long as you think, but you're making it to be this big thing because we just don't want to do it. And so our estimation of tasks that we don't want to do tends to be higher than it actually is.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I procrastinate on, and this is a very mundane task, is I hate matching socks. Like, I'll do my laundry, I'll do everything, and then it's like, like, I am always putting off socks. Like, literally, it'll take like an additional 24 to 48 hours for me to like do my socks, even after I've put all the laundry away. And this is not a hard task.
I also don't think you have to, I don't match socks, so I hate doing it, I don't do it. I just don't do it. I just like, and I go to parties and people see my unmatched socks and like, Kristen, I was like, yeah, I just don't care. It's just not important. You only have so much time.
Right.
Actually, I think one of the saddest things that happens as you get older is we tend to care more about cleaning. We have bigger houses, we have bigger areas, we have to care about cleaning. And this may not be a priority for you. And so, but it feels like a priority because you're supposed to care about all these, like, you know, picking up and doing all these things, and that crowds out other things. And so for people who are not clean, I don't like to think of them as not clean by choice, or they could be not clean by choice, by saying, I just have other priorities to do. I don't want to spend my Sunday morning doing this. And then I'm okay with that, right? It's like, you don't have to do that. You get to choose other things.
We've gone the other way. We got a puppy at the end of June. So my husband's a total neat freak. So we went from like our house being like completely spick and span to we have like gates everywhere. There's dirt. We used to be a shoes off household. Now with like the puppy just dragging in stuff, it's just like, so now we're at the point where it's like, and he's had to let go of a lot because he is that person. And I'm like, we can either spend time like trying to keep up with this, or we could just be like, you know what? We have a puppy and we live in Seattle. So it happens to be sunny right now, which is rare. But this time of year, but you know, it's muddy and gross outside.
Yeah. And I think that decision is very helpful. Women tend to be very bad at this, especially when they have a kid, is that same thing happens. You have a kid, all of a sudden you have more laundry, more cleaning, and then you get stressed out because you have to keep the same standard that you were held to before. And letting go of that, I think for a lot of people is a process. And then people internalize it that they're not doing a good job because they can't keep up with the standard they had before. And really, this is about priorities and opportunity cost. It's like time is just opportunity cost. Nobody gets more of it. How you spend it matters. If you do 10 minutes of cleaning, you're not doing 10 minutes of meditation. And you get to choose.
So literally one of the first exercises I do with new clients is that I have them write up a pie chart. You know, because the thing is that it's like, tell me how you're spending your time now. And then I have them say, give me the pie chart that you want it to look like 6 months from now. Because exactly to your point, you have to give up something in order to make time for something else. And even if you decide to cut back on sleep more and more, that you're going to run out of sleep to cut back on, which I don't advocate, by the way. But some people are like, well, I can cut back on my sleep. And I'm like, no, that's not exactly what we're trying to do here. But literally the whole point of the pie chart is to illustrate that fact that you have to give up something in order to make time for something else. And that ends up flipping a switch for a lot of people. I'm like, you can't just keep adding, because then you also have decision fatigue. And I think that that's something that isn't discussed enough, is decision fatigue. And I was wondering, do you find in the work you're doing at Irrational Labs that people are just like, fuck, I make so many decisions that like when I get home, I just don't want to make a decision?
Yeah, well, a lot of our work is kind of with these digital environments. So we find that generally kind of in digital environments, people do choose the default more often than not. So what that means is like in a perfect world, you'd evaluate every choice. You would say, look, I have 2 options of different plans like to sign up for. I have 2 options of different ways to use this product. And when you have to make a big decision, people procrastinate and bounce. When there's one pre-selected for you, all of a sudden people continue. So the idea of kind of having defaults in life and saying, you know, there are just some things that I'm not going to worry that much about. I've made a decision on how I'm going to live. So, you know, I choose not to buy clothes, but I have Newly. And so this idea means I'm not actually making a decision ever I've said I'm not going to buy clothes. By the way, I also don't wear jewelry. I have 0 jewelry. I've decided I'm not going to buy jewelry. I can do other things, and I'm okay with that. But by saying that as a rule of thumb, now I open up. I'm like, I will spend an hour picking out Nuuly every month, because you have to, Nuuly's like Rent the Runway, where you like pick out different clothes to get. And like, that's a tax, but that's a decision that I'm saying that is the one thing that I will be doing. So I think kind of pre-thinking about these, like, where are the defaults in your life? You know, the famous, like, you're only wearing black. Is actually a very nice way to make life simpler. You can think about this for dinners. You could think about this.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I get Factor for lunch, right? And so like I'll go in and I'll like choose up to 3 weeks in advance at one shot. And then like every 3 weeks, I have a calendar reminder, like go check Factor again. And then it's like, I pick the ones that I want. I don't think about lunch other than I go get the packet, throw it in the mic, and that's it. It takes care of the variety for me.
Yep. Another thing that I suggest parents do, and this is kind of if you have funding for it, but once you partner up with other people, it becomes much cheaper. So my husband and I get a nanny on the weekend mornings. Oh. And we share this typically with 2 to 4 kids. And so what once was $30 an hour is now $15 an hour. And what this does is allow us to consistently have time to work out and work. Like, I want to kind of extra hours on the weekend to do work. I want to also have an hour to do a workout. Now I know I'm paying for the chance to do that, so I better go do that. It's kind of one. These sunk costs are very nice. It also allows my husband and I not to have to negotiate so with kids, you basically have to say, I'm going to go work out. Is that okay? Can you take the kids? All of a sudden, you have to ask your husband for permission to work out. We never had to do that before kids. So by having a set time by which you can work out without having to ask for permission to go do this is really, it takes away that friction barrier that we said prevents people from doing things. So it's a nice system if parents can figure out the coordination with others.
No, I mean, I've never heard of like one for like a weekend morning, but I think that that's fascinating that, people can do that because it makes sense. Because I do say like marriage is transactional and people are like, that doesn't sound very romantic. And I'm like, how long have you been married? Right. And like, I love my husband, everything else, he's the best. And I have all the feels for him, but you're constantly asking each other for help, right? To cover for different things. That's just how it is. And, looking at it as like, if this is one less thing that we have to negotiate, and not that it necessarily means that there's a problem, like negotiation, I think tends to mean like there's like a problem, but it's just like, if it's just one less thing you have to navigate and be like, oh, okay, let's figure out how we're going to divide this labor, then is that worth your time? And is that worth, in your case, $15 an hour? So if that's like, $60 if you're gone for 4 hours, for peace of mind where he can go do his thing, you can go do your thing, or you're doing something together, maybe you're getting brunch, and just having like, a couple extra mimosas, and that's cool, right? Like whatever.
Yeah, these systems really do help. So setting it up, it would be hard for me real time to figure out that I want a nanny this weekend, because is there anything I'm doing that's that important for a nanny? Well, no, I'm just working out. So you really have to think about this in advance, because every time I'm like, it's not that important, but it is for my long-term health and my sanity in general to kind of have that morning. The other kind of hack is to think about some of these things like an investment. So if I think about the money I'm paying the nanny each time, I'm saying, is the thing I'm doing worth it? Versus if I sum up the whole total for the year, I say, is that how I want to spend that money? And you think about it from a holistic decision about your income and your ability to spend versus a one-off decision. You think about the opportunity cost of things you're not going to do. As I said, I don't buy shoes either, but shoes, jewelry, or things. So like there are some life trade-offs I've made, but it would be really hard to do those real time. And so that's the present bias is real time. We're going to solve for our, my present self. I want to stay up late and watch Netflix, versus like go to sleep and be ready for the meeting. And so thinking about those systems and maybe kind of like one hack I'm sure you probably recommend too is like having quarterly, if my spouse and I do kind of general days where we'll check in with each other and design different plans like this. So it's easier if you have kind of that set time to do it. We also try not to, although I'm sometimes bad at this, talk about some of these like bigger things ad hoc, right? If we can, basically, that's really stressful to like always be bringing up stuff. But we try to kind of bundle them into either meetings at the end of the week or these kind of longer term days that we spend together.
Yeah, I find that like what we do is like we've learned to time box. So, during COVID, we went to couples counseling just to kind of tweak some things. And I think the thing is that, time boxing I learned is a really good thing to do. So when you have to talk about something that's pretty serious and pretty intense, and let's say, it's going to be more intense for the other person, it's like, okay, you know what? We don't have to have this conversation go on forever. Let's just talk about this for 20 minutes and see where it's at. And then we'll figure out what the next step is, because it's rare that you have to have a resolution to something like that at that moment in time. Like that's rare. And so I find that time boxing is good so that, it's kind of like breaking down the tasks, like with the divorce situation, just like, all right, let's just lay out that this is a situation, right? And then it's, all right, now let's talk about, okay, so maybe tomorrow we're going to talk about like how we're going to tackle this part versus like the next part type of thing. And I find that still keeps the conversation fresh without it postponing the conversation, as opposed to just like dreading every time, like, you have like a heavy topic, because then when you do have to have a heavy conversation and it does have to happen all at once, you have some gas in the tank to have that. But if every conversation that requires a check-in becomes like something to dread, then I find that doesn't elicit like the best decision-making response, because you feel like you're under threat. When you're thinking about things and when people make decisions under duress, and you're seeing that a lot in tech right now, where you have a lot of people who are worried about their jobs and, they just feel like if they don't work all the time, that they're going to lose their job, and they're making decisions under stress. Have you found anything like in terms of the work that you're seeing, and do you have any advice on what people can do to kind of take a step back and not feel like they're making decisions from what I call almost a point of weakness? Because when you're under duress, you're not at your best.
And so this is just people working too much for kind of their joy in life.
Well, these are people who are working right now, not even for the joy in their life, because like the tech job market is so bad right now. And you have a lot of people feeling like, oh, if I'm not available all the time,
right, yeah,
then I'm going to lose my job. And so I don't think they're making good decisions in terms of like product decisions, even when you're not getting the sleep and you're not getting the boundaries.
Yeah. I don't know about that. I think actually, I think sometimes so I'll just like, there's a how do you design for your own boundaries, and then there's like, as a company, if people do more, it is better. And I think that's actually the real challenge, is actually if somebody does work 2 more hours, we will have better, faster outcomes. And you could say they're only productive for 1 of those hours, but that's 2 more hours they're working. And so I think that actually is the basic rub, is working more does help your career. And it's okay to acknowledge that. Mm-hmm. If you do work more, it is likely that you may climb the ladder 6 months faster. Your promotion cycle may be 6 months faster. The question is, what is the trade-off? And could you do something that makes you more productive in less time? But I think it is true at these large companies that people who pull hours, which is a little bit of a tax on women, because if you have kids, you're not actually like able to do as much. But this is true. So when say that does in the world of AI, say like, do you spend a day trying to automate some of your work? It's very, very difficult to like figure out how to use AI in the course of your normal job, because it's always faster to do it yourself or do it manually. So you actually really do have to invest in that. So if creating more time in your life is a priority, then you actually have to also make it a priority to create the systems that allow you to work better, faster, stronger. So I'd say that's kind of one tenet. The second is, something that I do, which is I live in a community. There's 20 people, 10 houses. I have my own 3-bedroom house here, so I'm not living with other people. I'm living next to them. We have 8 kids that are in this community. We have also 6 people who bought houses around us. My social life is extremely vibrant, not because I'm good at planning, not because I'm very likable, but because I've chosen to live by people, and it makes it easy for me to have a social life. And so left to my natural devices, I would be working 100% of the time. I am addicted to this productivity. But I've created a system where I live by people. And now I'm going to dinner every night at 7:30 with them. They're messaging about an event that they're going to go to. Like, I've created an environment that makes it now hard for me to work 100% of the time with my natural tendencies would make that possible. And so the kind of the like answer to the average person is like, schedule events in advance. You should have a lot of things you should have 2 or 3 things at night on your calendar, not at night, but at, weeks. You can't work each night to 9 p.m. You should have things on your calendar that block your time, but you can't mentally say, I'm just going to go read a book. Like, plan a thing that is hard for you to back out on. So if you can't go live by friends, by the way, which I do recommend, because again, making plans is hard and annoying, and like, you break them. It seems easier and more fun to stay in your pajamas in the moment than go out and hang out and get a drink. And so, or maybe that's exposing some of my priors.
Hey, no, whatever. There's no judgment.
Yeah. And so designing and planning this stuff up front, whether it be a monthly brunch with your friends, or whether it be every, Tuesday, you have a meetup with a different group of friends, like, there's a level of be the organizer in the group, even if it's not your normal MO, and get stuff on the calendar.
I would say like during COVID, that's when I think a lot of the text threads started to explode. But there's a couple close friends. We don't live in the same city anymore, and we have a monthly call. and we're pretty good, even though it's not in person, right? But the connection, it's pretty, like, if something causes us to miss it, it's pretty important, right? Like, it's something that I typically schedule around. And, you know, the three of us take it really seriously to the point where it's like, okay, like, let's try, if something does come up, let's try and reschedule it for another time during that week. And I think that there's also been studies that I've shown, you know, speaking of community, that when you do see your neighbors and talk to your neighbors, it does increase your happiness. I don't know if you've seen those types of studies, but those are things that I've seen, that when you engage with like your actual neighbors more, it increases your happiness.
Yeah, so that those do exist. I would say there's a level of that's like a weak tie theory. So basically, you know, okay, I'm going to meet somebody at the coffee shop and say hi to them, and we get this stronger sense of belonging. I think if people were to prioritize something, I would say get that 1 or 2 quality friends where you feel like if you have a bad day, you can give them a call. And you know, I'm not good, as I mentioned, I work a lot, so I'm not good at keeping in touch with people to kind of maintain these strong friendships. So over the years, I've had to observe what successful people do. And so the pro tip here is basically, you don't like try to do, you know, every time that you think about somebody, imagine you're like passing something about a movie that you watched with somebody, or you have kind of a thing, you see something on the internet and you think of them, take a screenshot and text them. So creating kind of like visibility and like frequency actually drives a lot of the friendship perception here. And so I think one thing is just like teaching people to be a little bit better friends, so that you have that one person who, when you do have a bad day, you can call up. And you actually, like, a lot of times people think that it's a burden to the other person to be asked to support you, and kind of we call it the Tom Sawyer effect, is people actually do want to help out. Right?
Yes.
There is a level of, if you ask somebody a question or for help, you're vulnerable, they get to be a hero, and now they're more connected to you.
Yes.
So that theory can drive a lot of closeness. So if you want to drive a stronger friendship, ask somebody for help.
I love that. One last topic I want to talk about before we wrap up is multitasking, and the theory that you're more productive when you multitask. And admittedly, I am guilty of this in the past, and I've worked very hard to rein that in. I'm not 100% perfect, but I'm definitely a lot more mindful of it now, and I've cut it back quite a bit. When you're thinking about behaviors and multitasking, like, what is going through your head as a behavioral scientist?
Yeah, so right now my phone is right here, so it's actually hard for me not to look at it. And so there is some new research by Angela Duckworth that basically says the closer a distraction is to you, the more you're distracted. It's so obvious, right? But we have to have a research study to show this. It's actually not that I don't have any willpower. I don't have any willpower if the thing is right next to me. I will never have any willpower. There's no thinking I could do to think my way out of that. And so again, you have to design your environment. You have to move your phone away from you. You have to close some of the apps. You have to turn off your notifications. These are just general things that, like, you will never, if there's a cookie in front of you that's your favorite cookie, you will eat the cookie. Our phones are our favorite cookies. And so we're going to always eat the cookie. Just don't have the cookie in front of you. And so that visual distance is enough to have, you have the psychological distance to avoid distraction.
Something you brought up earlier with the apps. And one of the things, I was off of Facebook for 7 years, and I went back on because I started Go Long, and that's where my demographic is. But I think social media is like an absolute hellhole. But the thing that got me to quit Facebook very quickly was I deleted the app, and I actually deliberately increased the friction, right? Before I deleted my account.
I only have Facebook on my computer, and I don't have it on my mobile. And so that is also another thing where it's like, okay, I just don't want to scroll on these things, but like sometimes I do have to log in. And so why don't I create the distance, the friction on my mobile?
Yeah. And then you could also like have it not remember your password. So you have to then be like, oh, I got to look up what my password is for Facebook.
Totally.
So you have like, and I found that was very helpful in being like, kind of getting me to quit it. Cause I'm like, yeah, I don't care that much that I want to do that. Right. Yeah, unfortunately, what Instagram does, because I have to post on Instagram, is that some of the things they make you do it in the actual mobile app. So you have to have like the app there.
Yeah.
But I've really tried to just like for certain things, if I don't need the app, it's like the app is not on my phone.
Yeah. I think that's the correct answer. And I think it's okay for people to go through periods by which you say, okay, I'm going to like delete this app. And then you want it again and you have it again. And now you're going to go back and delete the app. Like, I think we shame ourselves for like, oh, I have to go delete the app again. It's like, actually, no, this is like just kind of a natural evolution of like, you realize things are getting bad and you have to delete it again. And so I'm not opposed to that behavior. It's kind of like an alcoholic will likely relapse a few times before getting sober. And so you're going to have to kind of like delete app. Maybe you go back to it, then delete app. And that's an okay rhythm.
Sometimes I call it like when someone's trying to do a new habit, like they're bowling and they have the bumpers in the gutters and they need those bumpers in there to keep the ball in the lane so that you can knock go over some of the pins, right? And sometimes you need those guardrails, and it's okay when you're trying to learn something new to have those guardrails, and there's nothing to be ashamed about. We all have things where we need those bumpers in the bowling lane.
Yep. Yeah, totally.
All right, Kristen, I love this conversation. We can go on, but where can people find you? I know you have great worksheets on your website, so let's talk a little bit about that and the work that you're doing.
So Irrational Labs, we're a behavioral science consultancy. So we basically help companies change behavior for their users and their employees. And so going to irrationallabs.com, we have a lot of information there around behavioral economics and learning. If you go to the Learn tab, we also have a boot camp that's good for people just getting started. And then I also do a Substack, which is video teardowns of popular apps. So like,
oh, wow.
You can say Calm or Duolingo or Peloton, and I'll go in there and do like a 10-minute, although I say 5 minutes if you're on 2X, video teardown of the experience. And I think this helps people kind of say, there are the theories about how people behave, but now we apply them to the actual app and we kind of see what kind of sticks, or the theory behind why somebody would do anything.
I love that. So we'll link to all that. And in terms of social media, is Irrational Labs, you're on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I think following me on LinkedIn is the best way to do it. I post actually quite a bit. So I would say that's the move.
Okay. All right. We will link to all that. So Kristen, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. This show is produced and edited by JR Media Services with John Richardson. As a reminder, Go Long is an accountability coaching texting service focusing on women over 40. So we help you by being empathetic for your struggle, pragmatic solutions because you need something that works for your life, not someone else's, and optimistic that you can make the changes you want to make. With that, remember, it's your life. Go the distance. Go long.